Welcome to Some Guy's Garage. Today I'm going to talk about why I think EVs are boring. I know this will likely upset some of the EV crowd, but really this is why I can't get excited about them and why I find most review videos about EVs are pretty uninteresting, and not really why EVs are in general bad vehicles, because they're really not. I guess the first thing is, really, during most of these videos, there's only two metrics that are ever being discussed: straight line acceleration and range, along with charging. Around straight line acceleration, it's really down to how much power these things are getting now, and it's cool that they can do 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds or something like that, but how many people do that every day? It's really not that useful all the time, and it'll be fun the first few times. It'll be an acceleration rush, bit of excitement, but then, the excitement dies down and it's, okay, I can go really fast in a straight line, great. What they ignore all the time in these videos is things like ride quality or handling or braking. I mean, except maybe the Throttle House video recently with the Plaid, where the brakes basically didn't work for them. But really, it's all of the time they talk about the handling of these vehicles. It's always clarified with it's good, but only for how much it weighs. It's not just outright good. And there's really no getting around that with how much these vehicles do weigh. And then range and charging. Okay, we've got range anxiety. We've heard that time and time again about EVs. Maybe most of the time it'll be fine for most people, but you can't have the freedom to take a road trip or do something like that. If you've ever tried to drive one of these in a snowstorm in the middle of the winter up in Canada or something, are you really going to get the range that they claim they have? You're not going to see the 300 miles. You're only going to get 200 miles or 150 miles, and that ends up not being enough. EVs are just not there when it comes to range right now, and really the charging infrastructure around them isn't great, other than Tesla maybe. So it's just frustrating that, when anybody talks about an EV, it's not about the soul of the vehicle or the intangible emotional connection to the vehicle. It's all the quantitative stuff. How far can it go and how fast can it go? And really, that's it for what's considered a good EV or not. And that's just not as exciting as what you get with other vehicles. Similarly with styling, there's really been two paths they've been taking: either bland and sleek, bland being it's just a generic shape, and sleek for the aerodynamic purposes, or some sort of retro, quirky kind of design. If you look at a Tesla, whether it's a 3, an S, X, a Y, they all just look the same. Slightly different size, but they really do all look the same, and they're just kind of a generic car. I mean, that could be said about a lot of cars out in the industry right now from other manufacturers, that they do all kind of look the same, but there's nothing interesting or different or special about them. They're just a car. Or they've gone the retro take on it, which now it's styling for styling purpose, trying to make it different and quirky and fun because that's what's going to entice people to buy the EV. But they keep missing the mark. It's not a truly exciting or desirable or aggressive look that would set it apart, except maybe some of the hypercars that are coming out that are EVs. Nothing that the average person would look at and be like, oh, that's a really cool looking car. I'd really like to have one of those when it comes to the EVs out there. So taking a look at what is out there, there's the hypercars, so the Lotus Evija, the Rimac Nevera, maybe the Tesla Roadster if it ever does come about. The really cool technology demonstrations, they're not really bringing a lot to the EV market. It's really just to, say, hey, we have 2,000 horsepower and we can go really fast. They're pretty unrealistic, but they are interesting, right? As the technology is capable of doing some things with an EV that we've never been able to do with internal combustion at the same level or the same packaging or something like that. Then there's the pickup trucks, so the F-150 Lightning, the Hummer EV, the Rivian. Pickups never really made sense as an EV to begin with. Yes, they're popular sellers, so I can see why the manufacturers are trying to make EVs as pickups as well, but given that pickups are usually used for towing and hauling things, they need range, and using them as a truck takes away from their range because towing a 5,000-pound trailer is going to eat away at the battery really fast. And it also doesn't help that we're taking an already fairly inefficient vehicle and adding several thousand pounds of batteries on top of that. The Hummer EV is getting close to 10,000 pounds, which is just crazy to think about. And then there's some of the SUVs, so like the Mustang Mach-E or the Hyundai Ioniq or the Jaguar I-Pace or things like that. Decent enough attempts, they're a normal enough vehicle, they're interesting, but still somewhat reasonable and somewhat obtainable by people. So they're a good start and they're probably a good direction to head. Comparatively to, say, the Tesla Model S, the Lucid Air, the Mach-E QS, the Porsche Taycan, the Audi e-Tron, those twins. they're all sedans, right? And they're all luxury sedans, which were on their way out anyway, and not really in the hands of the normal person. Why haven't they done a Honda Accord EV or a similar sort of sedan that is more what people were actually buying in the market still? And then, of course, there's all of the small compact cars. So the BMW i3, the Nissan Leaf, Kia Niro, the Hyundai Kona, Chevy Bolt, all of those. They're too expensive for being a compact car. You know, nobody wants to pay $40,000 for a compact car that would normally cost $20,000. And because they're so small, they don't have the range and capabilities that you would otherwise have in a compact car. It just doesn't fit in the marketplace. So really, how do you get adoption of EVs out there? I'm going to maybe post some questions here. So where's the Miata of the EV world? Maybe when the Boxster Cayman go electric in the next generation, that'll happen. As it stands, there's no real fun enthusiast car, similar with like a GT86. If there was a compact, fun car, instead of a Nissan Leaf, you could get a GT86 as an EV. That might be somewhere where a enthusiast would actually go for it because it's a fun, interesting, fun to drive car, but could still be EV. When you look at these EVs in videos, where's the equivalent of Chris Harris sliding a GT3 around a track all day? Most of the videos that you see of EV reviews, they might take them on the track, but they certainly aren't sliding them around. They're not having fun with them. They're just testing their acceleration and the burst of speed down the straights and then kind of coaxing it through the corner and hoping it makes it. Or where's the RAV4 or Camry of EVs? You know, simple, straightforward transportation, no quirks, nothing trying to make them futuristic or giant digital displays, just good, solid, reliable transportation. They're some of the best selling cars in the world, and yet we don't really have anything in the EV marketplace that fills that. I'm not even going to call it a niche, that type of vehicle. And then I guess the other thing is they need to stop pushing these vehicles so hard, especially governments and things like that with incentives. Make the vehicles compelling in their own right. Make it a better car to buy regardless of the fact that it's an EV. Think about something like, say, a dual clutch transmission over a manual today. People will pick the dual clutches because there are benefits above and beyond a manual. Maybe not for driver engagement, but in terms of, say, pure lap times, a dual clutch is faster. So do the same with EVs. Make them better, full stop, and not just better because they're an EV. And I guess finally, would I personally drive an EV? I think yes, eventually. If something interesting that's relatively good value for money, that's not too compromised, even though I'm not too worried about range in general, it needs to be something that's not a pain to live with every day. And then it needs to have some soul. It needs to be a vehicle that makes me smile, that makes me want to look back at it as I walk away. Something that I'm excited to drive, that I'll take out to drive just for the sake of driving and enjoying it. As an enthusiast, we want to have a vehicle that's fun and not just an appliance. Well, that's my take on EVs. Even though I see some potential here, as it stands, the current state of EVs are pretty boring. What does everyone else think about the current state of EVs? Are you also finding them boring, or is there any EVs that you're actually excited about? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.